I know always is a strong word. We don't like to say always or use absolutes, but hybrid onions always. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a spectacular day. It is Thursday, September 14th here in South Georgia, and today it's all about onions. So we're going to talk about growing your own onion plants, why you should grow your own onion plants, how to grow your own onion plants, and we're going to get our own onion plants started here in the greenhouse behind me. So in our last video, we gave you a little update on some of our fall transplants. We got some lettuce started in that tray right there. And today, we've got 3 more trays ready to get some onions. And just to be clear, today we're talking about bulbing onions only. Those onions that have 2 distinct growing phases, the vegetative phase and the bulbing phase. We're not talking about bunching onions, aka spring onions. We're not talking about multiplying onions like those Louisiana evergreen shallots or those Egyptian walking onions that we planted in some of our recent videos. Now we have lots of great onion videos on our channel. If you go to our channel page, you should find a playlist there called How to Grow Onions or something like that, and you'll find tons of onion videos showing growing onion seedlings, transplanting onions, fertilizing onions, harvesting onions, storing onions, all kind of good stuff. We also have a couple videos talking about our top 10 onion growing tips, which are really helpful if you struggle growing onions or maybe your onions aren't quite as big as you want them to be. And today we're going to cover a few of those top 10 tips as it pertains to growing your own onion transplants. So today we'll talk about tips 1 through 4 on that top 10 onion growing tip list that we have, and then we'll talk specifically about some of the varieties that we're going to be growing. So starting out with tip number 1, you got to choose the right day length variety for your area. This is extremely important. If you choose the wrong day length variety, you're not going to be successful. So I'll try to throw a map up on the screen right here so you can see, just in case you don't know what type you should be planting. Down here in the south, we plant short day onion varieties. If you're in the middle of the country, you'll want to plant intermediate day onion varieties, and if you're in the northern part of the country, you'll want to plant long day onion varieties. Now if you live kind of on the border of one of those regions, say kind of between the short day and intermediate day region, you can probably get by with planting either. Same thing if you live between intermediate day and long day, you can probably plant either. Now this whole day length thing can be kind of confusing to new gardeners, so I'll try to simplify it as much as I can. It basically determines when the onion is going to start the bulbing phase. So the short day onions that we grow down here in the south are going to start bulbing when day length reaches 10 to 12 hours. That usually happens in late winter, early spring for us. Those intermediate day onions are going to start bulbing when day length gets between 12 and 14 hours. And for those of you up north that are planting those long day onions, those will start bulbing when day length reaches 14 to 16 hours. So keep in mind here, in the south, during the winter, our days are longer than those of you up north. But in the summer, those of you up north have much longer days than we have down here. It's kind of like the whole deal in Alaska during the winter. It's dark all the time, and during the summer, it's light all the time. So choosing the right day length varieties for your area is absolutely crucial. That's the first stepping stone on the path to onion growing success. Now our second tip here has more to do with specific varieties, not necessarily day length distinctions. Now I haven't grown every single short day onion variety out there, but I have grown a lot of them. Some open pollinated, some hybrids. We've even done trials between similar varieties comparing the hybrids and the open pollinated. It has been my experience that hybrid onions always, I know always is a strong word, we don't like to say always or use absolutes, but hybrid onions always outperform the open pollinated varieties. Now I know a lot of people grow heirloom or open pollinated varieties of certain vegetables because they like the ability to save their own seed and replant it year after year. But onions are a little bit different because we don't want onions to go to seed. If onions bolt, flower, go to seed, then they usually don't store very long. And so we're trying to prevent onions from going to seed. That's why I don't think open pollinated or heirloom is as important with onions, because we don't want them to go to seed. So there's a huge advantage, in my opinion, to growing the hybrid varieties because they will always outperform, get bigger, just be more vigorous than those open pollinated varieties. So to give you an example of that, here's a variety we'll be planting in a little bit called Timon. This is one of the short day onion varieties we have available on our website. A couple years ago, we did a side-by-side trial comparing Timon to a very similar round sweet onion in the Texas Legend, aka Texas Early Grano. And this Timon variety significantly outperformed that Texas Early Grano, which is an open pollinated, the Timon being a hybrid. And the number 3 tip on our top 10 list is to grow your own onion plants. And there are several great reasons why you should grow your own onion plants. One, you get to pick the varieties that you want to grow. If you go buy onion plants, you can only get what that grower has grown. You don't have unlimited access to a bunch of different varieties. But if you grow your own transplants, you can go online, pick whatever seeds you can find, and have your own plants for that variety. And growing your own onion plants gives you much more control over the timing of planting. If you're buying onion plants, you're hoping they have plants ready when you want to put onions in the ground. Maybe they get their plants pretty early and you're not ready to put them in the ground, and they're just kind of sitting somewhere getting all dry and crispy until you're ready to plant them. And lastly, when you grow your own onion plants, those transplants or seedlings are never really stressed. You take them straight from your greenhouse or seed starting room and put them in the ground. Whereas if you buy onion plants, those plants could have been out of the ground a week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe even more than that. And so by going straight from your greenhouse or seed starting room into the ground, your plants are going to start growing much faster, as opposed to some kind of dry plants that have been out of the soil for a while. You put those in the ground and they take a little longer to get going. Now, number 4 on our top 10 onion tip list, and the last tip we'll cover today, is to plant at the right time. Not too early, not too late. And this can get a little tricky depending on where you live, but I always like to tell people, use your temperatures as a guide as far as when you should be planting. Onions can generally take temperatures down to 20 degrees. Last year during the Arctic blast, mine got burnt back pretty bad by 17 degrees, but they did recover. So if you live in the South and you rarely get down in the low 20s, you can overwinter your onions just like we do. If you're in a short day region, maybe kind of towards the top of the short day planting region, and you're seeing temperatures in the teens on a regular basis, you might not want to overwinter your onions. You might want to wait until late winter to get yours planted. And then for the intermediate and the long day regions, same thing there. You want to wait until you're not getting a lot of temperatures in the low 20s before you plant your onions. So here in South Georgia, we try to get our onion transplants in the ground sometime in November. I have planted as early as late October. I have planted as late as December. November seems to be ideal for us. Some years planting in early November is more advantageous. Some years planting in late November seems to work out better. It just varies from year to year, but November is a good time slot for us to aim for. So there's a guy here locally, not too far from us, that grows onions in his front yard every single year, and he's always the first one of anyone around here to get onions in the ground. And come late November, early December, he'll have some pretty dang good looking onions. And every time we ride by there, Brooklyn always says, man, his onions look really, really good. And they always look better than my onions initially. But I tell her, just hold on, be patient. eventually my onions always kind of outpace his and look better in the long run. He gets an earlier start, but I'm not sure that earlier start really helps him grow better onions. So that's why I don't plant in late October when he does. I planted, like I said, in December before. The problem with planting onions late is they don't have time to establish and start growing before you may get some cold temperatures. They can handle a frost, no problem. Light frost won't hurt them, but you want them to be established in the ground with a nice root system before they start getting some of those freezing temps. Now, if you're growing your own onion plants like we recommend, you need to know that that's going to take about 5 to 6 weeks. There's no harm in starting your onion transplants too early. One of the great things about onions is they hold well in the seed starting trays. So we could have them ready to transplant, and we could leave them in there an additional month and they'll be just fine. It's not like the cabbage and broccoli we have growing back here where we're worried about it getting root bound in the cell. Those onion transplants are fine just hanging out in those trays for a while if we're not ready to put them in the ground. So since we're aiming for a November in-ground date, we're going to get ours started today, about 5 to 6 weeks before November rolls around, and that should give us pretty good timing there. So those are the 4 tips that'll help get you started, and I'll try to remember to put some links in the description below to one of those top 10 onion tip videos, and also a blog on our website that explains it all in a little more detail. Now let's talk about the varieties that we're going to be planting here today. These are all hybrid short day varieties, so you don't want to plant these unless you live in the short day region or on the edge of the short day region. We've grown all these before. They perform really well for us. Highly recommend these varieties, and like I told you earlier, we do have all of these available on our website at lazydogfarm.com. So the first one we've got here is called DP Sweet, and if you've been following the channel a while, you've seen us grow some massive onions with this variety. This past year, we grew one that was almost 3 pounds. Biggest onion we've ever grown. It wasn't quite 3 pounds, but it was about as close as you could get. So this is a Granix type onion. It's not completely flattened. It's a little bit round, but it is slightly flattened. They get absolutely huge. They're nice and sweet. Just a really solid onion variety. And then we have Timon, which is another yellow sweet onion, but this one is more round as opposed to some of the flatter varieties. And the great thing about Timon is that it is really consistent. You can plant a 30-foot row of these and you'll get very few runts out of the bunch. A lot of these are consistently sized, just nice round onions, and these round sweet onions tend to store a little longer than the flattened sweet onions. And then the third yellow sweet onion variety we'll be planting is called Georgia Boy. Now, for those of you that like the really flat ones, almost look like a hamburger patty, those Vidalia type sweet onions, this is it right here. Grew this one for the first time last year and really liked it. Then we have a red onion, this variety called Chianti, that we've been growing for several years now. Best red onion, hands down, I have ever grown. Red onions are notorious for going to seed early and then not storing very well. I've never had one of these bolt on me. I probably will now this year after saying that, but so far never had one of these bolt, and these get massive. We use these to make pickled red onions. They're absolutely delicious, and I find that this Chianti variety doesn't have quite as much bite as some other red onion varieties do. It's a little more on the sweeter side. And then lastly, we've got a white onion variety here called White Phantom that we grew last year. A really consistent, solid white onion variety. Got some pretty good size out of these. Now, I know white onions aren't traditionally as popular as the yellow sweet onions, but white onions are a very valuable onion to grow because they store much longer than the sweet onions do. And sometimes when you're cooking, you want a little more bite, a little more onion flavor than you get from a sweet onion, and that's where the white onions come into play. All right, so now let's talk about how to grow your own onion plants. So you can start your onion seeds in a wide variety of containers. You could do it indoors. If it was cool enough outside, you could even start your own onion plants in a container or raised bed outside. Now today we'll be planting ours in one of these deep PropTech trays. I don't remember how many cells this tray has in it. These got some nice deep cells in them. These work really great for onions, but you don't have to have something like this. You could use something like this, just an open tray. Doesn't necessarily have to have dividers in it. You could even use like a Pyrex casserole dish if you wanted to. We don't have to worry about singulating onions that much because they're easy to tease apart and thin. When we're planting them in the ground, we won't worry about getting only one seed per cell here. We'll plant all these cells pretty thick and just thin them out later. So just use what you've got to grow your own onion transplants. Now, if you've never planted onion seeds, you do need to know that they take a little more patience than some other seeds. They're going to prefer a soil temp in the 70s for best and fastest germination. We're going to get a little cool down here in the next day or so, which should be ideal temperatures for onion germination. And a lot of times they can take 10 days to germinate in ideal soil conditions. If the soil's a little too cool or a little too warm, it might take up to 2 weeks to get them to germinate. So don't expect to see them popping just after a few days like you would cabbage, collards, broccoli, that kind of stuff. Give them some time, but they'll eventually pop. So we've already got 3 of these deep PropTech trays with Pro Mix in them. Got that pre-moistened. Already made some little dibbles in each cell there. I think we'll do a whole tray of DP Sweet here. We'll split these other 2 trays, do half White Phantom, half Chianti here, half Georgia Boy, half Timon here. Now we won't need near this many onion plants for our backyard garden, but I always like to have some extras to share. So let's start getting some of these babies in the tray here. With these little seed packets we have on our website, we put the onion seeds in a little Ziploc bag. That way you don't have to worry about them getting stuck down in the corner of that packet. So you can see how tiny they are there. Because they're so tiny, it's really hard to just get only 1 seed per cell. These things are easy to thin. So as we drop these here, if we get 2 or 3 seeds per cell, no big deal. We'll just keep rocking along until we get at least 1 seed per cell. So I'm going to dump these in my hand here. And I like to use kind of a sprinkle technique here, because like I said, I'm not worried about double planting these cells. Alright, so we got at least 1 seed in all those cells amongst those 3 trays. Now we just need to lightly cover these seeds. Now this tip is not on our top 10 list. This is top secret. I just share it with those of you watching this video. You need to cover them with some good Go Dogs perlite. That'll help them grow a lot better. So we just want to lightly cover these. Don't want to cover them so much that we can't see the divisions between the cells. That's kind of our general rule of thumb here. Just a little bit. We don't want these planted no more than about a 1/4 inch deep. Alright, so we got those covered, and when these germinate in about 10 days, they're going to look different than any other seedling you grow. And I'll try to put a picture on the screen here so you can see what I'm talking about. So when these sprout, they're going to be bent, almost like a little arch of an onion seedling. And if you've never seen it, it will look quite unusual. As the next couple days go by, the top of that onion seedling, usually with the seed capsule attached, will flip up just like that. So it will be bent at first, and then it will flip up. When it flips up like that, that's when we want to start feeding these babies here. So we'll be sure to keep you all updated as these onion seeds germinate, when we start feeding them, when we trim the tops a little bit, after they get about 5 or 6 inches tall. We'll show you the entire process over the next couple months. Now, if for some reason you are ahead of us and you've already got your onion seeds started but are wondering what to do, you can go to any of those product pages for our onion seeds, scroll down a little bit, and there's a nice little kind of step-by-step of how to grow out your own onion plants. You can read that and kind of follow that guide. If you're in the middle of the country or the northern part of the country and it's going to be a while before you're thinking about onions, all of this information, with the exception of when we plant, will still apply to you. You can still grow your own onion plants just like we do. You'll just do it at a different time. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com. And if you want to see all those varieties we just planted at full maturity, check out this video right here from our harvest earlier this year. We'll show you all those different varieties, how big they got, and kind of compare the shapes and sizes of each. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.